We're joined today by
J.R. Romano.
Hey guys, it's J.R. Romano. Joining me a little bit later will be Bob Stefanowski. We're going to talk a little bit about his run for office, what his experience was like, what he thinks about not only the direction of the state or what we should be doing as a party. But first I wanted to touch base on a couple things that are happening on the news right now. One obviously is on the federal level is the government shutdown over the border wall. What's so frustrating about this conversation of the border wall is as Republicans we actually don't humanize a lot of our arguments, right? We don't talk about it in the context of the impact our policies will have in bettering people's lives. And I think the thing that really bothers me on the discussion on the border wall is, Dick Blumenthal went and he had a press conference out in New London. And at this press conference, he was sitting there saying, we have to fund the Coast Guard Academy and the salaries. And I completely agree with you. When it comes to public safety, that should never be in question in regards to supporting and paying for the people that put their lives on the line every day. But what I find so ironic and hypocritical of Dick Blumenthal is he was asked the question about the border wall. And of course, I made these same comments to a reporter, but they never managed to make it into the story. Dick Blumenthal stands in New London, and he's talking about how he will resist the idea of a border wall in the same community that was rocked by an illegal immigrant killing a young girl by the name of Casey Chadwick. And I'm sure Dick Blumenthal never paid a visit to Casey Chadwick's mother to ask her opinion about illegal immigration in sanctuary cities and how the state of Connecticut failed her and her daughter. Casey lost her life because of bad immigration policy. But Dick Blumenthal doesn't want to talk about Casey Chadwick. Dick Blumenthal doesn't want to meet with Casey Chadwick's mother because it means that there's actually a victim to this political war, right? There's a victim to this search for the next Democrat voter, because that's what this is about. And not only do we have Casey Chadwick, who this was an impact. People in the state of Connecticut were impacted by this political battle that's happening and raging on in Washington, D.C. You had Officer Singh out in California who was killed by an illegal immigrant. And the thing that just is so disturbing about the Democratic Party is they pretend that somehow the victims of these crimes, these murders, aren't real. Or the fact that if we as Republicans bring them up, somehow we're bad people. The reality is Officer Singh died because California is a sanctuary state. The sheriff of that county where Officer Singh lost his life said directly the result of losing this officer was because of the sanctuary city policies within that community.
This criminal, Mr. Arriaga, crossed our border illegally into Arizona some time ago. He is a criminal. He has 2 prior arrests for DUI. Remember, that's the reason that Officer Singh stopped him, because we had probable cause to believe that he was under the influence of alcohol. Past behavior is typically a predictor of future behavior, and an officer loses his life over a DUI stop from someone who's been previously arrested. Mr. Arriaga also has known gang affiliation. Norteño street gangs, Sureño street gangs. He claims to be a Sureño. We can't ignore the fact that this could have been preventable. And under SB 54 in California, based on 2 arrests for DUI and some other active warrants that this criminal has out there, law enforcement would have been prohibited from sharing any information with ICE about this criminal gang member. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not how you protect a community. This is not how you assure the people who live in our community, regardless of their ethnicity, their culture, their race, any of that they live in a safe community. Because there are people who want to exploit and victimize others. And in this case, Officer Singh sacrificed everything. He paid the ultimate price trying to protect and serve the people of Newman. An immigrant immigrated here lawfully and legally to pursue his American dream. He achieved that goal. And his dream was taken from him.
He wanted to stand up for the values and virtues of what this nation represents, and he was murdered. And Dick Blumenthal doesn't care. Chris Murphy doesn't care. His life was simply a casualty to someone else's dream. And the Democratic Party in this country don't care about people like Officer Singh and his young daughter. They don't care the impact of this political war and how American families are being impacted by this standstill. You know, Casey Chadwick died because Connecticut had sanctuary city policy. Officer Singh died because California has sanctuary city policies. What is it going to take? How many people need to die before Dick Blumenthal and Chris Murphy realize that actual Americans' lives are being negatively impacted by this standoff? It is astounding to me at how they just toss aside these hardworking middle-class Americans because it doesn't fit their narrative. And it doesn't matter whether it's immigration, whether it's education. You know, I've touched on before, this is a state that put a young African-American woman in jail for stealing an education. If it doesn't fit their narrative, they ignore they just ignore it. It doesn't exist. These people who've been negatively impacted, who've lost lives, who've lost family matters, don't matter, because Dick Blumenthal and Chris Murphy can't raise money from it. So that's been one of the most disturbing things about this government shutdown and the fight over the border wall. And the other thing before I bring on Bob, the other thing I want to touch on is Governor Ned Lamont. Oh my God, it's terrible. He decided to hire. And for those who don't know, when you become a new governor, you choose all the new commissioners and things like that. He chose a commissioner of the DOT, and he basically gave them a $50,000 raise over the previous commissioner. $50,000 raise a year over the previous commissioner of the DOT. And his justification was, well, he was making much more when he was the head of the Metro North. I don't care about that. I want to know how this commissioner is going to walk in and sit and talk to a state employee who's making $55,000, $65,000 a year, and he's going to look at his employees and he's going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to need you to find cost savings for this organization and for this department. Meanwhile, you just got a $50,000 raise. How tone deaf does Ned Lamont have to be? We are $1 billion in debt. Middle-class, hardworking people in the state of Connecticut are suffering, and the Democrat solution is just more government and more taxation. And when you look at the previous election, you'll see Ned Lamont won because wealthier, unaffiliated voters didn't care about the middle class of this state. They didn't care of how higher taxes, about tolls, about government spending would impact, say, a single mom who's making $55,000 a year. Ned Lamont, it is literally one of the stupidest things I could ever imagine, even from the optics of it. You're going to hire a commissioner at a $50,000 pay increase and then demand that department hold the line on spending? Talk about mixed messages. I mean, if I'm Ned Lamont, I'm apologizing to the taxpayer of this state and saying, you know what, that probably, I shouldn't have done that. But I wanted this it doesn't even matter. Here's a guy that was making $330,000 a year with Metro North for a long time. Talk about the 1%. But no, we're gonna pad the pockets of our political allies. That's the first measure I'm gonna do as your governor. That's Ned Lamont right there. That is his idea of leadership, is to overpay for positions and then demand the taxpayers foot the bill. We're in trouble. We are in trouble. I can't go on. I mean, anyway, some of the things that have happened over the last few months since the election, and I know that, and I've had a couple conversations with Bob Stefanowski, and I know that he has taken this very hard, as many of us have. I wanted to give Bob an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about his experience. He's a first-time candidate. So without further ado, Bob Stefanowski. Welcome, Bob Stefanowski. Bob, I wanted to say thank you, first of all, for coming on and talking to me. And you worked so hard this last election cycle. I wanted to thank you and your family for everything you did. And I just kind of wanted to give an opportunity to talk a little bit about, what it was like for you, the experience, and having been a first-time candidate. I think many of the people would be really curious in your opinion on the process and what it was like for you to do this.
So, first of all, I want to thank you. The party was terrific. I know I went a little bit different route than traditional candidates have, but I got to tell you, your staff, the RTCs, I really, really appreciate what everybody did. I feel bad. I know a lot of people are disappointed. I'm disappointed as well. But I do want to assure people we put everything we absolutely had into winning this thing. When you lose an election like this, there's a lot of introspection and second guessing. I think what's important for the party is to find out and talk about, which I know you're doing a debrief now. What did we do right? What areas do we need to improve on so that we have better results, not just at the governor level, but across the state at the legislator level next time? So I just wanted to start with thanking everybody. I wish it had gone differently. I feel bad, and a lot of people do, but I just want to assure you we absolutely did try our best.
Well, I just want to say too, Bob, I can attest to the fact that you've really taken this personally. You put a lot of energy into it, and you felt the burden of carrying the banner for the Republican Party, and I know that you've really taken it hard, as all of us have. But I want you to say that you were a great candidate, and you represented the Republican Party really well. So I know, and because you and I have had conversations, and I know that you're kind of beating yourself up about it, but I got to tell you, we went to battle, and I'll go to battle with you any day.
No, I would too, and I appreciate that. I think on the positive side, I don't think anybody in the state knew who I or Amy was a year ago, and we made a heck of a lot of progress. That's due to a lot of people inside the party. When you reflect at it, I'd say the positive parts were I made a lot of good friends throughout the state. I probably did 75 to 100 RTCs, and just being part of that experience, visiting each of those RTCs and getting to see the diversity of the state and the issues that we face. The primary was tough with 5 candidates, but in the primary, but I respect every one of them. I think we put a good field out there. If you look at the different candidates, everybody had a little bit different thing to offer. And we gave people across the state a choice. And then the general was the general. I think on the positive side, I enjoyed meeting the people. I enjoyed getting to know the state better. I enjoyed getting to know the different issues better. The negative side is that, the attack ads are tough. Particularly in the general, where Ned would take something that has an ounce of truth and really exaggerate it. But when you get into this game, you got to realize that's part of the process. I got a lot tougher as it went along. But I think that, some of the press sometimes, I'm not sure was totally unbiased. There were some very, very good press people out there, and then there were some that I didn't think were overly objective. But again, that's part of the game as well. So overall, it was a great learning experience. I wish it were a different outcome. I do think Republicans need to take back control of the state. But it was great for my kids, my 3 daughters, to see the process. Great for my wife, and great for me.
Yeah, I'm curious, Bob. What was the biggest adjustment for your family? I know obviously you have your wife and your kids. Having thrust you into this spotlight like that, what was it like for them? How did your family deal with adjusting to that?
I saw growth in all of them. Amy really came on towards the end. I mean, she doesn't like to speak in front of groups, and towards the end, she was getting on TV. Election night, she was so she got more self-confident. I got a 16-year-old, and, for a 16-year-old, having your dad run for governor is probably, the worst thing ever happened in the world, because you don't really want to be noticed. But as the campaign went along, they saw the importance. Of Republican values, lower taxes, getting jobs back, and it was really an education for them in terms of what's important to the state.
Yeah, it's interesting when people who have never been involved in the process kind of get exposed to it in that kind of transition. And I can honestly tell you, Bob, and no disrespect, but your wife is much cooler than you are.
I know she is.
I think the other thing that I'm really curious about is what do you think is the biggest challenge for a statewide candidate or Republican in general in Connecticut? I mean, what would you say or advice that you would give to anyone that wants to run as a Republican and carry our banner? Like what was the thing that kind of or advice that you would give to a future candidate?
Yeah, it's a great.
Or to yourself before you started this process.
Well, first of all, I think the fundraising, needs to be fixed. The CEP is one route to go. I was up against a self-funder in Ned who had unlimited money, so I was kind of caught in the middle. And there was some, I think, not totally off base criticism that I wasn't out there much, but because I was in the middle, I was spending 6 to 8 hours a day fundraising right through the general because we had to raise enough money to keep up with Ned. So I think somehow we got to figure out the fundraising piece of it and have it be more of a level playing field. I also think that, and I know it's not totally under our control, but having an August primary and then jump into a November general, that's not a lot of time to get the message out there. So that makes it tough. But in terms of advice, one of the best things somebody told me early on was, if you have a day where something goes wrong, they think that's the end of the election, that you're going to lose, whether it's a news article or something, don't believe it. But if you have a day where you think it went so well that you're absolutely sure you're going to win, don't believe that either. So keep it up with the roller coaster and not getting discouraged and staying positive, I think, is the toughest part of it.
Actually, I can kind of understand that in regards to being the party chairman. There's lots of chatter, lots of conversations, and you got to keep your wits about you. You got to stay focused. And that's actually what my last and final question for you, Bob, is. What do you think the people of Connecticut, the average hardworking family, the single mom out there that's earning $55,000 a year, what should they be on the lookout for in the next legislative session? Like what is your biggest fear for them?
Well, I think we got to hold them accountable. I did an editorial in the Current. I think it was in there yesterday. Ned did say a few good things. He was going to get rid of the business entity tax. He was going to provide a property tax credit. And I hate tolls in any form, but at least we got to admit that he's only going to do out-of-state tractor trailers. Now, I'm cautiously optimistic, but we got to hold these guys to their promises. You got a very progressive caucus on the Democratic side. And what are they talking about? Minimum wage increases, free tuition, all the costs that they haven't figured out how to pay for yet. So I do think one of the things we did do in the campaign is we focused the discussion on the economy. Lower taxes, bringing back jobs, giving that single mom more take-home pay so that she can do the things that she needs to do. We need to hold them accountable for it. And we need to keep close attention. I'm going to stay involved, which is why I wrote the editorial, just to remind people, here's what was promised. Let's not forget it all 7 weeks after the election, and let's hold these leaders accountable for delivering on it.
No, I completely agree with you on that. And we're going to do our part up here to remind voters. And for anyone out there listening, what people need to understand, Bob's effort and what we were able to accomplish, it's like sports, though. The only thing that matters is wins and losses. It doesn't matter if you lose by 1 point or 50 points. But what the Republican Party managed to do, and Bob, I don't know if you know this or not, we actually, because of you, and I think there's some irony here, at the next state convention, we are going to have 100 more delegates because of how well we performed, and you're the most amount of Republican votes outside of Jody Rell, who got the most of votes of anyone ever. You received the most amount of votes of any Republican outside of Jody Rell. It means that we have 100 more delegates going to our convention in 4 years because there's a formula that's calculated. And it's a terrible consolation prize when you think about it, because I know I'd rather be calling you governor right now.
Yep.
But this is where we as Republicans, I think, need to be reminded of the work we have to do, because there's less of us than them. We have to do more work. We have to work harder. We have to do the phone banking. We have to start earlier. And the value of all those small little things, which could mean the difference between a victory. I don't know if you know this or not. We had 8 recounts in the legislative races. 8. Something like 20 races were decided by 2 percentage points or less. So, I do, like I thought as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about, there's some irony for you having skipped the convention, which I don't know if you know, I'm not a big fan of the convention process, but because of your efforts, we have 100 more delegates at the next state convention.
Well, I promise to be there next time. I'll have a drink with everybody. But, it's tough, JR. On the one hand, to get 650,000 votes is amazing. To your point, more than almost any Republican in history. But, we didn't get it over the line. So I think the important thing is to stay positive, not infight within the party.
Yeah.
Have a rational analysis, which is I know what you're doing right now. Don't battle it out in the press. Have a rational analysis because it was close. It's not like we lost by 30 points and we got to totally revamp things. It was close, and we got to figure out what happens next to get a Republican governor in there and legislature.
Listen, Bob, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you joining me. And let me know if you need anything.
Okay. Right? I'll be seeing you around. Thank you so
Bob.
much.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.